All right, so we're gonna get things rolling here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give you guys a chance to teach the class. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with pioneers, except we're not gonna show you the chart, we're not gonna give it away. And the pioneers, hopefully they've picked a person who will brief out, and they're just gonna have 20 seconds to be able to share what they feel are their key characteristics of their voice. So 20 seconds. All right, who is your designated leader? You're on the end, so I think you need to do it. And you have to say your name and your acronym because I can't remember.
Bold, bloomy.
Bold, bloomy, all right.
We are people who believe that anything is possible.
Up front. Oh, yes. Bloomy, can you come up front because we're recording you? Is the mic on? Okay, great.
It's terrible because we're not confident, so arrogant. We're the guardians. We're the responsible ones. We're the ones who get things done.
Right up here, you get to talk to the mic even. Good. You just knew. Yep.
For our voice, for Panyo, we believe that we are right all of the time. We are very definite, we are leader, we are competitive, we have new ideas. Anything is possible from our end. We got a big picture.
That's right. Give him a hand. He's right. That wasn't hard, was it? All right. That was all we needed. Thanks. Because now we're going to look at the chart and we're going to say, all right, pioneers. What is important about pioneers? Number one, you'll see that there's a volume bar there. And you see how there's 5 little volume bars there? Pioneers are the loudest voice. A pioneer, you probably only have to ask them one time what their thought is. And then they're going to go and they're going to give it to you. And you're going to hear them loud and clear. That's a pioneer. A population that they represent in the world, only 7%. We have a lot of them sitting over there. That's because pioneers tend to enjoy leadership. So that's why we had a lot in church leadership. But if you look at the whole world, they only make up 7% of the population. So keep that in mind as you think about your own teams and your own congregations. They are champions of strategic vision. They're great leaders. They love strategy. They love vision. They love problem solving, focused results. They're just natural-born leaders, a lot of them. Things that they need to watch out for, pioneers sometimes can lack sensitivity. First thing you had, it was Bowie, right? Benny. Blemmy? I'm going to get it, I'm sorry. First thing you said was that we think we're always right. Sometimes they lack sensitivity. Sometimes pioneers, since they think they're always right, they're unwilling to listen to others. They can be perceived as arrogant because they think they're always right and they're not willing to listen to others. And how do we, if we wanted to empower a pioneer and help them out, how could we help them? The great thing is about pioneers is they're kind of like Energizer bunnies. They're self-powered. They keep going and going and going. You don't need to give them too much encouragement. But just confirming their knowledge of the subject will help them to thrive and move forward. And one thing I want to talk about, there was a gentleman in the back here in the Guardian group. I can't remember his name. Raise your hand. What was your name again?
Chuck.
Chuck, what was your C?
What I named myself?
Were you creative or courageous?
Yeah, I was creating.
Creating Chuck. All right, creating Chuck looked at his definition and looked at his first voice and he said, I identify with, a third of this, but 2/3 of it I don't really identify with. When he looked at some of the negative things, some of the things that he needs to watch out for, he's like, I don't really resonate with all of these. What was important to know is that this is a general context, a general construct that we're teaching, and in this construct, you could be brand new, base level, immature in your voice, or you could be very mature in your voice. Meaning, you understand the pros and cons of your natural voice, and you know how to manage them. That's the whole point of this course. Know yourself to lead yourself. As you see these descriptions of these 5 voices, if you think, boy, these are right on, then awesome. If you think, I don't really know, that doesn't really describe me, it could be that you're more mature in your voice. It could be that through other, strength finders or other learnings that you've had, you've been able to identify some of the weaknesses and begin to work on them. It could be that you have a living God living in your heart that has been able to change you and has been able to grow you, and you're not stuck and hung up on some of these things as you once were, and that we're a new creation in God. That's the cool thing. God can take us and these things that we need to watch out for and transform us and change us. These are just things that might naturally go and kind of be pitfalls for people that would have these voices, but God can overcome them. So you might be seeing that in your own life. So don't think, I can't relate to any of this because it's not correct. You might just be immature. God may have been working in your heart. Connectors. Who's our connector who wants to share? All right, come on up. Take the microphone. Yes, I didn't want to show you. Well, I will show because she can't see it now. Now it's okay. Thank you.
All right. The connectors are champions of relationships and strategic partnerships. They're brilliant at rallying people to causes that they believe in. They believe that everybody should be a part of whatever's going on. They get really excited about future opportunities, and they're like, I'm going to make it happen. Whatever we need, we can find the resources. We know somebody. We got a guy. We got a resource who can pull it together. Probably one of the biggest challenges is it's sometimes hard to stay focused, because once the initial excitement wears off, following through to the end is like, oh boy, there's something better out there. And we can tend to, with enthusiasm and our passion, overpromise and underdeliver. Because everything is like, yes, I can do that, or I can get people to do it, and promise more than we can actually have happen. And that kind of critique can be personal. When someone says, I don't know, you didn't quite get it, you didn't hit the mark, that can feel very personal.
Thank you. What was your name and adjective again?
Aspiring Ann.
Aspiring Ann, thank you very much.
Aspirational.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So Ann hit it on the head. She had the paper right there. She marked it off. She did the right way. Good job. Connectors. I'm a connector, so just so you all know. Connectors, we have this second loudest voice. We have 4 bars up there. You generally don't need to ask us twice. We will share our thoughts. We're more than happy to present our ideas to you. We make up 11% of the population. So on the smaller side, we are champions of those relational networks. Connectors are great because they might not know the answer, but they know where to get it. I will often say at Lockheed Martin, even though I've got multiple degrees and I've worked there for 20 years, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. But I know the people that are the smart people, and I can get amazing things done by pulling the right people together and letting them work together. I don't have to do it. They can do it. You guys as pastors, what a wonderful skill this is. When you read in the Bible the definition of the pastor, it's not you doing the work, it's having the body of Christ do it, empowering them and equipping them. So this is really cool. You guys can really embrace this as a connector. Things that we need to watch out for. Connectors always interpret challenge of their ideas as personal. So I shouldn't say always. We should say immature connectors can interpret challenge as personal. So just watch out for that. And the reason why is connectors are very passionate about their ideas, their products, the things that they want to do. And they take it personally. They're really good pitch people because they embrace whatever it is they're teaching so much. So when somebody brings critique to them, it feels very personal because they've taken this project on and it's very personal to them. So when you critique a connector, remember that. How do we empower connectors? Give them time to share their ideas and passions and appreciate them before you critique. Time is something that most of these voices will need. If a connector is standing there and presenting their ideas and sharing with their team, and you cut them off immediately and start asking a million questions and don't let them finish, they're taking that personally. So make sure you give them time. And we're going to dig into triggers and ways to empower people later on, so we'll hit that a lot harder later. So you can actually know within your team, if you have somebody that you think is a connector, how can I relate with them better? Guardians. Who is our guardian? All right, nice.
So my answer to this was daring and dangerous Darren. We are the champions of responsibility and stewardship. You all have great ideas. You have wonderful thoughts. But we want to hear some detail. We want to hear you clarify those things. How is that going to work? What's the logic behind that? What's the best practices? How are we going to make sense of what you're talking about out here and making it work for what we're about to do? Those are the things we want to hear. Those are the things that we want to understand before we get behind something. Sometimes we're accused of being perfectionists. We're not. We just have a vision of what we want to see happen, and we want us to get to that goal. And so sometimes that means that you're going to bring us something, we're going to say, not quite what we were thinking. Take that back to the drawing board, please. Not quite what we thought. Don't take it as being us offending you. We're just saying that's not what our vision is. We want to see something a little bit better, and we know you can do it. Thank you very much.
All right, so I have to give you another quick story. So, I work with a bunch of engineers. A lot of times they'll present like this, and they'll just kind of mumble and they'll talk. So a lot of times it's easy for me to be one of the more boisterous voices in the room. So it's really fun to be talking to you guys, because you guys talk for a living, and this is great to see the different techniques you use. This is fun. Sidebar, but I just want to compliment you guys on your ability to speak to others. Thank you for that. Guardians. Guardians, you guys have a medium voice. You're not afraid to speak your opinion, so that is good. But you also usually aren't the loudest voice in the room. Pioneers will usually be the loudest voice. They will like to share their opinion frequently and loudly. Guardians make up 30% of the world population. That is the second largest group that exists. There's a lot of guardians out there. A lot of people. Things that they're champions of: due diligence. They want to make sure they're doing the right thing. Guardians are awesome because they keep your team out of trouble. They make sure that you're following the right processes. They make sure that that you're managing your resources correctly, that your systems are efficient, your processes are working. Dave, I know that you created dashboards a little while ago. I don't remember who our guardians are on the team, but they're people that probably will be really helpful for you to hone those dashboards and make sure they're working right, because they already love systems. So guardians are super needed in a church to make sure that you're staying out of trouble and you're doing the right things. Things that they need to watch out for. Guardians sometimes can be risk adverse. Since they like to do the right thing and follow the right path and follow the rule book, they don't love stepping out of bounds and taking a risk. They can take a risk if you take a lot of time and prepare them and show them that you've thought about the risks and you can mitigate them properly. So just think about that when you're talking to guardians. They could potentially bring excessive critique or be negative. It has to do with their strength. Their strength is process and questioning and making sure that you're safe. So when you flip that and you look at the other side, sometimes they can ask too many questions. So be aware of that. And we're going to talk more about these later. So things that we can do to empower them is welcome their challenge and their critique, and welcome their commitment to due diligence, because it is for our own benefit. It is for the team's benefit, the church's benefit. Next, creatives. Who's going to speak? All right. Don't forget your adjective.
Oh, I'm strategic, Shirley. And, well, that made perfect sense when I read this definition to me. But what was interesting for us is that when Ken and I talked, he's an introvert and I'm an extrovert, and it made a difference in how we interpreted how we saw ourselves in light of being creative. But in general, creatives are the people, we're scanning the horizon. We're looking for what needs to be seen before you can see it, before anybody else can see it, and usually we'll find things that need changing or improvement or whatever. We believe everything's possible, and things can always be better than they are. So we're looking to improve things as well. The difficulty with that sometimes is that it's an intuitive kind of thing, and it can be hard to explain to other people why we know what we know. Like, we just know that we know this is either a danger or something, but it's very difficult to, we don't have the facts that you need, Darren. I'm very sorry. And so that's part of that for us. We do tend to hold ourselves to very high standards personally, very into accountability and responsibility. And that can be frustrating when others around us don't seem to have those same high standards. And so we have very great concern for relational harmony when we're trying to discuss concepts with people, knowing that sometimes they don't have the same way of looking at it that we do. And we tend to get bored with the present and repetitive routine. And so we'll always be, again, sort of that futuristic idea. If you think Strength Finders, it really is a fit there for those kinds of things. But that's what the creative is like, according to this.
Thanks, Cheryl. Appreciate it. All right, so creatives. Creatives, you guys have 2 on your volume bar. Just means that you will not push as hard to be heard. It doesn't mean that you don't want to be heard. It means that you're probably not going to push as much. So think about that when you work with creatives. They make up 9% of the population, so relatively small percentage of people that you can draw from in your team and in your congregation. They are champions of future ideas. They love to think out into the future. What could this be? What could our church become? What could our staff look like? How could we operate? They might drive you crazy because they're not happy with how things are right now, because they're thinking, man, it could be so much better. It's good now, but it could be so much better. They love innovation. They love changing, not just for the sake of change, but to make it better, to improve it. And they love organizational integrity. They love an organization that works well together. So when they're thinking innovation and change, they're not thinking of circumventing the processes or the organization that's in place. They want to make sure it's honored and upheld. Okay? Your creatives are super important because they will help you get from here to the future. If you feel like you're stuck and you don't know what to do, grab a creative. Take them out for coffee. Talk to them a little bit. If you've established trust, if you've gone around the room and asked them for their acronym, and if you've established trust with them, if you're able to get them comfortable to start talking about their ideas, you'll be amazed at some of the information you can get. Things that you might not have thought about. Creatives you need to watch out for. Sometimes they can struggle to communicate effectively, and here's why. A creative lives in the present, but their mind lives in the future. They're thinking how things can be and how they should be. And they've skipped some of the steps as to how to get there because they're like, man, this is how it could be. This is where it would operate so well. So you need to watch out as a creative that when you are thinking in the future that you're not too idealistic and that you're not only living out there. As a creative, you'll need to help people walk from the present to the future and get them to the point where you're at. How do we empower our creatives? Don't judge them on what they say first. The things that they say first might seem crazy to you, or they might be a little off because they haven't fully thought through all of the ways that you can get to the future. So don't judge them first. Remember, these people are valuable and you want to hear their thoughts. Let them make a few errors at first. Give them that freedom and latitude, and then you can work with them to figure out how they got to that future point and work out some of the steps and details. How do we empower them? So we did this. Don't judge them on what they say first. Help them communicate their ideas, and this is so important, to let people be wrong. Not just creatives. It's very important for creatives, but for anybody. Me being an engineer, I often judge people way too hard. I expect others to operate at the level I do. You guys as pastors, you might have the same tendency. You might want people to get it. I've preached this topic 15 times. How come you don't get it yet? Think about this. Think about the greatest times that you've learned in your life. When you've messed something up. When you've done something wrong. Think about the impact that had on your life and how you learned from it. You guys are all teachers. Allowing people to make mistakes is so important, so powerful. You have, especially for us as parents, we want to correct, we want to fix. If we can embrace people in their mistakes, connect with them, let them know it's okay, and then help them get it right the next time. You don't want them to make the same mistake over and over again, but use that opportunity of that mistake to connect with them and help them move forward in whatever it is in their life, instead of judging them. Nurturers. Who is our nurturer speaker? All right. Don't forget your adjective.
It's Base Camp Brian.
Base Camp Brian.
Absolutely. We felt Jesus was a nurturer, and that should be natural, and we'd love for you guys to join us. We really would. One of the key things that stood out to us, a term that a lot of us have probably, if you've been through the NCS model, is agenda harmony. We have an agenda, but we want it to be harmonious. We'd like people to come alongside to really grasp the idea and to join us collaboratively to be able to do that. And one of the greatest things for us is the growth of people. To see people grow, that's encouraging and exciting to us, to bring people along and to see them prosper and to follow. And of course, one of the keys somebody brought up was, to really be a leader, you have to look behind you and see if anybody's really following. And as nurturers, we want to make sure that people are following us, that we do have a solid agenda, and that we're taking time. Our number one concern is people. Jesus in his ministry, it was about people, it was about relationships. And so that's our primary objective, is to see people grow, to serve people, and just to love people and one another.
Thank you. All right, you stumped the teacher. I've never thought, what was Jesus' primary voice? Never thought about that. I'll have to think.
We just told you.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. But you bring up a good point, because this is where my mind initially went. And that's us too. You were teaching Ted. Yes, I got it. I'm horrible with names. I could never be a pastor because I don't know anybody's name. Teaching Ted said that he was a balance of all of them. I want you guys to hear this. You are not your primary voice. Your primary voice is just a measure from the questions you answered of what is probable to be your most comfortable position. You are all 5 of the voices. So when you see, oh, this fits me perfectly, and this part, it doesn't really fit me all that much, it's probably because you're not just that voice. This is an easy way to kind of bucket you so we can teach you some things and you can gravitate to a few main ideas that capture you, but you are all 5 voices. Yes?
Bill, I'm sorry, but you weren't in our group. We fit the bill. All of us in that group.
Yeah? Yes. But when you took it, a lot of you could have taken it and your score could have come out like 76%, creative and 75% nurturer. It is possible to have 2 voices that are really close to each other. When we teach this, as we get deeper and deeper into it, a lot of times you'll have you're mostly your primary and your secondary voice. That is generally what will be a pretty good way to describe you. And also there's things called nemesis voices. So a creative and a guardian, they're nemesis voices. And the reason why is a creative, they live out here in the land of what could be, and I want to get there. A guardian is a present voice. A guardian is, no, we live right here, right now. We deal with the consequences of right here and right now. We need to make sure that we're doing things that keep us safe right now. So thinking about, you know, who you are in your voice and your nemesis voices, it's really important, because if you are leading a team and one of your direct reports is a nemesis voice, you might tend to mitigate what you think about them or their input. But remember, in the very beginning, we said we want to create balanced teams. We want to create teams where you are able to value everyone's voice, because here's something really important. When I was in college, I got a certificate in something called Curtin's Adaptive Innovation Theory. It is a measure of problem-solving style. The whole point of this certificate was this. It was saying that when you have a team, you want to hire people just like yourself, because it's easy to work with people just like yourself. If you're a pioneer, you want to hire pioneers, because you know how to lead pioneers. You are a pioneer. But a strong team is not a homogeneous team. A strong team is a diverse team. You can solve a lot of problems as a pioneer. Maybe this much. But this is pioneer, this is creative, guardian, nurture. You've missed out on all this over here if you're only hiring people just like yourself. So think about that as you build your own teams. Don't just hire people that are easy to work with. Hire people that are going to help you solve the greatest number of problems for the kingdom. All right, so we are going to... Oh, we missed the nurturers. How did I miss the nurturers? No, wait, nurturers did go. Fine, you went. Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry. I got so excited. All right, so nurturers, you guys have the quietest voice. Again, it doesn't mean that you don't want to be heard. It just means that you will not push as much to be heard. You represent 43% of the population, so this is by far the largest percentage of the population that's out there. So just because they're quiet doesn't mean that they're not powerful. They are the most powerful group because they're the largest group. We need to consider them beyond all the other groups. They're champions of people, relational harmony, and values. I call them the glue. If they're not engaged, if we've neglected them or mitigated them, you have a broken team. We need to make sure that we have them engaged. What they need to watch out for, nurturers, is sometimes you could have a fear of conflict, and you might not want to speak out. Not always, but sometimes. What's important for nurturers to remember is that you as a nurturer, your voice matters. You speak for most of the people in the room generally. We need your input. So being silent is actually a disservice to the whole team. So please speak up, nurturers. What we need to watch out for as well is if we're in our meeting and the nurturers are being quiet, we need to make space and room for them to be able to have a voice. I was pretty bad at that. Remember the infinity loop that we talked about? Know yourself to lead yourself. I would not allow time for that uncomfortable silence. Nurturers love that. They need it. They're like, huh. They're thinking about the question. They're processing. So make sure you allow time for the nurturers to speak. How do we empower them? When you have a team meeting, don't force a nurturer to go first, but let them speak if they would like. A pioneer and a nurturer, or a pioneer and a connector, they're going to want to raise their hand first. Pioneers and connectors, you guys should practice self-control. Sit on your hands. Give some time for others. Like I said, we did this at Leidos, my last company. My boss did it with us. Our whole team did this. My boss was a connector. I was a connector. We literally would talk about it in our staff meeting where we'd say, all right, How many times did we raise our hands first this past week? And we would discuss it and bring it up. And it was awesome. This material changed the culture of our team in a year from all of us going through it. And it can change the cultures of the teams that you work with if you choose to use it. And I'm definitely a resource to help you with it. So let our nurturers speak first, but don't force them because that feels awkward and unnatural. But give them the time. Affirm their confidence. They're generally not going to say, I'm the smartest person in the room. Look to me. I know what I'm doing. But if we want to affirm them and help them move forward and give them the confidence to speak, if it's warranted, affirm their confidence. So now what we're going to do is I'm actually going to give you guys a quick break because we've been here for a little while. Give you guys a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll keep going. Sound good? All right. Thanks, guys.
I love it. I have wanted a truck like that since I was a kid.
Okay, we're going to come back together for a moment before we give it back over to Bill. Just a few things we're going to share. Happy. You're happy. I knew that. I knew you were happy. All right. Check, check, checkmate. I sent Dave Bennett a text. Dave is extremely slow on text unless he's sending you one and wants to answer. Then he's really fast. But I sent Dave a text. I said, Bill is really sharp. I think he should plant another Fairview Village. You have my permission. So talk with him, Bill. Let's see if we can make that happen. No, Dave's a pioneer. Their text matters because they got a good idea. They're sending it to you. Now I understand. I love you, Dave. No, Dave's pretty quick, actually. Did you hear they was having a funeral and the worst man in town was being buried, and his brother came to the pastor and said, if you say something good about my brother, there's $100,000 for the church. You've heard this? And he said, you're on. So he preached the funeral, and he got to the very end, and he said, I got to get that $100,000. He said, oh, compared to his brother, he was a saint. I like that. I don't know where I was going with it, but it just came to mind. I think we can say something good about each other. You're a nurturer, Owen? Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know nurturers were so sure of themselves. They think they're like Jesus. That's about as sure as I've heard. Yes, we'll get to that. Hang around. Well, just want to take a moment, just stall in so everybody can get back in. I want to introduce you to someone. This is, I think it's his first district event. Pastor OCL Arcia. Come, Brother OCL. Come up and let us see you for a moment. This is Pastor OCL. We literally hired him on the telephone through a translator when I was in Harrisonburg, Virginia, because we wanted to have someone who could lead our Latino worship. And we found his resume. He was down in Mexico, and he called in, and we interviewed him. And he and his family sold everything, packed their 8 suitcases, came to Virginia. And you were with me, 11 years? Yeah. 11 years. And just before I got the call here, he felt released. And he left like the month before I did. And he was just laying around Virginia kind of doing nothing, And I asked him to come over to Cumberland County, Maryland, and meet with Pastor Peterson. I'm not Maryland. Yeah, that's another Cumberland. Cumberland County, New Jersey. And he met with Pastor Peterson and Murky and Clay. And we all met and prayed. And 30 days later, I called Pastor OCL to see what the Lord had said. He said, the Lord said, I'm going to New Jersey. So here he is, and he's a great brother. You're going to love him. Welcome, Pastor OCL. I didn't know we'd be back together so soon. That's wonderful. God is good. And I'm not trying to bring people from Virginia. They just keep coming. But I do have Mark Pruse. He sent me a text the other day, and he had met somebody from Virginia, Tim West. He said, please bring all the people from Virginia you can find. He really likes Tim and Amanda West. And I said, well, okay, I got your green light. We'll see what happens. Well, Bill, we're so moved by your presentation. You really share. It makes us want to lean in and tell us the things we want to know and don't want to know, like you've been doing. It's very good. I've learned that some of the things I said that were not like me, I was a little bit in denial. When I asked my wife, she confirmed that, yes, you can be that way. So they say when you take this test, you should let your wife or your husband take it for you and then see how you score. I don't have that much courage yet. But, so I've already picked up on things that are going to help me today, help me into the future. And I hope this won't be your last presentation with us. I think you've got some other things that can help us a lot. So we want to welcome you again, Bill. Let's give him a round of applause. And thanks to Dave for bringing his friend to us.
Thanks so much. So I told you guys I'm a connector, so a lot of times connectors are passionate about what they teach, and I love this stuff. I used to sell Cutco knives, and the only reason I could do it is because I believed in their product. They had a really good product. This is so much more fun to teach. Man, talk about the product. It's science-based but biblical-based, and that's why I can get behind it. And it's stuff that I've seen work for my team of 8 or 9 people at Leidos. And that's why I get so excited, because I know that if you're interested, it can transform your own team, and it can transform what you're doing. And the coolest thing is, as I've been coming back to all the time, is it's all based on Christ. So I can teach this to you and be caring and empathetic and excited for you guys because I know that it's based on Christ. And a lot of times you can't do that in a technical workplace because we're not allowed to bring Christ into it. But that's why it's so much fun to share it with you guys, because you guys can see underneath the covers a little bit and know what it's based off of. We'll make these charts available to you guys. So if there's anything that you want to learn more, take more time to digest and read, you can have it. Also, you can have my phone number, email, whatever you need. Like I said, I love this stuff, and if I can help you in any way, we'd love to help you guys. So what we want to do is we're going to get you back into your voice groups, and we're going to give you guys an exercise. We're going to let you have about 4 minutes to do this exercise. We want you guys to discuss, what do you feel your voice brings at its best? What most frustrates your voice in a team meeting? What do you think other voices think about your voice? And lastly, what might your voice need to be aware of to be an inclusive leader? And remember, inclusivity is about the different voices, not black, white, male, female, age, or anything like that. Okay? So get in your voice groups. Pioneers are over here. Connectors, guardians, creatives, nurturers.
Oh, yes.
All right, we're going to move on back to the main group here in just a minute. Go ahead and finish up your conversations.
That was what was awesome. That's what they said. Fun suckers and dream crushers.
You want to go back? We're going to finish up here, so we are going to move forward. I have lots more content I want to give to you, and I don't want to keep you too much past lunchtime. It's never a good idea to push lunchtime back. So take 10 more seconds, finish up here. All right, we're going to move forward now. So if you want, you can stay in your voice groups, because we're going to be doing some more things in your voice groups. One of the fun things to teach about this is... I can.
Because they're going to keep working while you're talking.
Yeah, they are. One of the cool things about this is that we all have a weapon system. It's not a good idea to use your weapon system, but we have a weapon system that kind of connects with our primary voice. The weapon system is really the way that you would react when you're triggered. Probably an unhealthy way that you would react if you're triggered, or if someone pushes you too far. Okay? You guys good? I can give you the charts later, don't worry. Yeah. Who's got a camera? Take a picture. All right, they're good. So, weapon systems. The weapon system for pioneers. Yes, you guys are going to want to see this. You guys have weapon systems. See this up here? Weapon system for pioneer. When you guys are triggered, when you're pushed too far, an unhealthy way that you might respond is to use a grenade launcher. Grenade launcher is, if you're in a team meeting, and this might not happen with this crowd, but maybe it has happened in the past, maybe when you were immature in your voice. When you would launch your grenade launcher, you could be in a team meeting, somebody says something you don't like, somebody pushes you a little further than you would like, and you go ballistic on them. You shoot a grenade in the middle of this meeting and you launch it at a person. The result when you launch your grenade is total shutdown. You may have directed your anger towards one person, your frustration towards one person, but in your acting out at that person, you've shut down not only that person, but you've shut down everyone else in that room. The result is that anyone in that room is now no longer speaking. You don't have a team meeting anymore. You've ended it. I give an example of when I was at Lockheed. I had a boss whose name was Tracy Stern. We loved her. She was great. Tracy would brief our status every morning at like 8 o'clock in a meeting. She would sit at this table. All the directors would sit up the other end. And Tracy's team, myself included, we'd sit on the outside in side chairs. Tracy briefed out her message one morning, and the directors didn't like what she said. One of the directors stood up, pointed at her, and let her have it. Tracy ended up crying in that meeting in front of the directors and in front of her team. That meeting was normally like an hour and a half long. She was one of the first people to present. The meeting ended in about 15 minutes. The director that stood up and yelled at her lost the team that day, lost productivity, because that person was a pioneer and they launched their weapon. We learn about these not to scare us. We learn about these to say, as a pioneer, this could be a natural tendency for you to happen in your life. Not only at work, but with your husband, or with your wife, or with your children. It's important for us to know these so we can know ourselves, so we can lead ourselves better through Christ. That's why we're going to talk about these. Connectors, we have a different weapon. Our weapon system is cyber warfare. And these weapons are all related to our strengths. My strength as a connector is I know a lot of people. I can get things done by working with people. I can relate to people. I can get you to trust me and like me. The problem is I can use that for the negative as well. If somebody does something that I don't like, I can begin to poison the culture about that person. Darren, right? Yes. Darren, if I don't like Darren, I could say, hey, you know what? I know you work on the same team with Darren, and Darren's great, isn't he? He's a great guy. He's a great preacher. He came up here and he wowed it. But, you know, you might not want to have him speak to the youth because sometimes he's a little arrogant. He's kind of full of himself. But you know what? He's only done that. I've only seen him do it one time. So you'll be fine, I'm sure, because he's a good guy. He loves Christ. He's good. You know what? I heard that you're going to have Darren speak at your town hall. you might want to just give him 5 minutes because sometimes he tends to keep going and going and going. You know, but he's not going to do it with you, I'm sure, because, you know, he's a stand-up guy. He's good. He'll be fine. See what I mean? As a connector, I'm using my network, and I'm not overtly saying he's a jerk, he's bad, he stinks, but I'm dripping little bits of poison. And I'm poisoning the atmosphere. And the problem is I'm destroying I'm destroying his life. I'm destroying your legacy. I'm destroying who the people in this room trust you. I'm destroying what they think about you. So it's a really dangerous weapon system to use. I'm poisoning the culture. So think about that if you're a connector. Do you ever do that accidentally? Not on purpose. Maybe accidentally. Guardians. Guardians, since you guys are so good at asking questions, since you're so good at following the right rules and the processes, sometimes you can get stuck in that. And you can enter the interrogation mode. And you can start asking questions and questions and questions. And I don't get this. I'm just not comfortable with this. So you ask more questions and more questions. And the people on the other side are thinking, oh my goodness, this person doesn't trust me. You are a guardian, right? If you've ever gotten into this, the people on the other side, you wouldn't think that mistrust would be the effect. But if you keep asking me so many questions, yet you were the pastor who came to me and asked me to lead this in the first place, and now you're not trusting me, you're not asking, or you're asking too many questions of me, now I feel like, well, Darren might have asked me to do this, but now he doesn't think I can do it, because he's just killing me with questions. So if you're a guardian, be careful of asking too many questions, because people can feel that they're not trusted. The other people, of course, are going to feel frustration and anger. Why are you stalling me so much? Why are you asking all these questions? Let it go. So be careful as a guardian that you don't ask too many questions. What we'll tell you as guardians, don't stop asking questions. Pick the top 3. Pick the top 5. It's of value to ask those questions, but don't go down the rabbit trail and go too far. Creatives, as you guys took the test, the measure, you saw that there was a Myers-Briggs personality type that is many times associated with those primary voices. For the creative, they actually felt that there was a big disparity between how a creative feeler and a creative thinker would use their weapon system, so they broke it out here. A creative feeler, since they're very emotional, they are a feeler, they will sometimes Hulk out. When they Hulk out, that means that they change. You know, Bruce Banner was normally a person and then he turned into a green monster. 2 different people. What is scary about the Hulk is the result of when you launch that weapon system is that people will have a lack of trust in you because you acted out of character. Now they don't know what to expect anymore with you because normally you're a mild-mannered scientist in Bruce Banner's case. But he changed. As a creative feeler, you changed. And you hulked out, you yelled at somebody, you screamed at somebody, you became angry or upset. You weren't your normal loving, caring pastor self. So now, the next time somebody has to work with you, they're a little hesitant, they're a little distant, because they saw you Hulk out on somebody else or on them, and they don't have that trust. Remember, we started the day off talking about trust. Trust is important when building relationships and building teams. Creative thinker is slightly different. Their weapon is a sniper rifle. A creative thinker is not going to Hulk out and yell and scream. A creative thinker will probably more likely be a little more cerebral in the way they attack somebody. They will generally take one single shot at somebody publicly, and that shot has truth in it. That shot will have so much truth in it and honesty in it that it's debilitating for that person who received it because they and everybody else in the room sees the truth in it. But you did it in a way that was public and you shouldn't have. You did it without love. You didn't have the other person's best interest in mind when you shared with them this critique. That's really dangerous. When you do that, you've lost that person, and you've lost the other people in the room because they don't want that to happen to them. It's okay to give honest feedback to people in the proper place with the proper technique. Nurturers, you guys have the most interesting weapon system of all. Remember, I said you guys are the glue. We need to have our nurturers engaged because they keep the team moving. They keep the team together and loving and functioning. Your weapon system is actually withdrawal of care for others. Normally, when you would help others, when you would work with others, you'll do what needs to be done. And then you'll follow it up with, well, how else can I help you? What else do you need? How can I support you? What's the best way forward that we can work together? I want to embrace you. When you have nurturers on your team and they do a task for you and they say, here you go, and walk the other way, something's wrong. Their weapon system's gone off. Somehow they've been triggered and they're disassociating themselves with the team and they are no longer willing to care for the team or for you. That's a great way to know when a nurturer is disengaged. We already took our break. You don't get another one. So now we're going to move into triggers. So now that we know what the weapon systems are, now we're going to talk about what actually triggers our weapon systems. So we're going to have you're already in your voice group, so you're set. We're going to do 4 minutes to talk about what do you think are the things that would trigger your weapon system. And then think about what would the impact be on the performance of your team if you deployed your weapon system. If you have an example of when you deployed your weapon system and you're willing to be vulnerable with others, go ahead and share because you'll learn a lot from those examples. Okay, so I'll leave this up on there. You guys can answer those questions. You'll have 4 minutes. Oh, and choose a different leader to brief out your results. We're going to have you guys share them as well. All right, guys, the duck is quacking. We're going to bring it back and get things started.
I didn't think it fit with the mission of what we were supposed to be doing.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to give you guys 1, maybe 2 minutes to brief out what do you think triggers your voice and what the impact is on the performance of your team if you deployed your weapon. We're going to start with the nurturers over here. And who is going to be our leader that will speak? Come on up. And don't forget your acronym.
All right, I am planning or prepared Paul, and we came up with a couple triggers for nurturers. One would be people who are perceived as bullies, someone who's trying to push and hurt or control. And the other is someone who insists on cutting off a conversation, who kind of drops the bomb and walks away. And I think even though there's maybe opposite ways of behavior, the result for both of those behaviors is that it stops the process. It ends the ability to have relationships. So it's kind of the opposite of what the nurturer is at. But the interesting thing is, for the results of deploying this weapon, that's kind of the result of deploying the weapon. That if you deploy this weapon of withdrawal of care, that you actually you put the brakes on. You actually do the thing that you're trying to prevent.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. Thank you. So we're going to do this in reverse order. So nurturers, a lot of times they will end up deploying their weapon if they feel like they're being taken for granted. if they feel like they're not being heard. You know, he had talked about bullies. If the values of the group are being ignored or bullied, or if a person's values are being ignored or bullied, that is going to set a nurturer off. Specifically, people you care about being treated unfairly, wow, that is going to fire up the nurturers, because they're all about the team, the community, the building, the love of the team. They're glue of the team. So when you guys see that there's an injustice happening, you guys take that personally. So remember, though, when you see this happening, try not to disengage, because we need you guys. We need you guys to, you know, you represent 43% of the population, and we need you guys to make sure that you push through and don't deploy your weapon system, because without your involvement, the team's not operating. The team's not functioning. Let's have creatives. We'll do you all together. Creatives, who is going to be your speaker? All right.
So we struggled with this one a bit. I think the imagery of the word Hulk is, that's a lot there. But I think the things that we talked about that we had in common here is anybody who attacks our integrity is a trigger. You can pretty much, I can't get this to stay up. You can pretty much say anything about anything, but integrity is really like the core of who we are. So that's one. And then people who usurp our leadership, and a lot of times that's by wanting to not pay attention to the standards that have been set. They're going to operate in lower standards, or they're going to do things that really disrupt relational harmony in the church. So those were the two things that we came up with for that.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, you definitely hit on some of the key items there. You know, for creatives, if the things that they hold dear, their values, are being ignored or trampled on, that's going to set them off. If the people that they feel responsibility for are being treated poorly, kind of like a nurturer in this case, that could set them off. Someone breaks a promise to them. That will definitely be one of the things that could make them want to trigger their weapons system. Now, we'll also do creative thinkers as well. Now, remember, a difference between the F and the T. The thinkers, for creatives, they're more cerebral generally. So they're thinking. So if you're saying, "Hey, you're incompetent," that's really going to upset a creative. If you're being arrogant towards them, again, that's kind of pushing against their competence. They're not going to enjoy that at all. If you dismiss their ideas, again, you're kind of saying, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. You're too far out there in the future. That could set them off. Or if you exaggerate the truth with them, they're not going to enjoy that at all and could set them off. Now let's have the guardians. Come on up. All right.
We use the symmetry of a guided missile. And we came up with 2 or 3, but let's deal with 2 of them. The thoughts are, when people have proven themselves not to be true, after they've spoken something and spoken up and whatnot, and over time or whatever, you feel, okay, you burned me once, you burned me twice, but you know, we're just going to leave you on the side. And the other one was, that I brought up, was the fact that when we as the people, when we as the leaders of the church, when we are overwhelmed, we're in over our heads, like a parent that has small children, and when you're under the gun, the bills are being due, this been happening, and the kids are running around doing what they do, and before you know it, sit down, shut up! And then that missile comes into effect, and it has devastating effect. Guided missile.
Yep, definitely. So the items that could set that missile off. Start at the bottom. Illogical people. when guardians have to deal with illogical people, that really frustrates them because they are very logical, because they want to follow the steps, they want to follow the processes. If you're not doing that, that's greatly frustrating. Unresponsive arrogance. Arrogance is one that sets most people off. If you're being arrogant with them and you're unresponsive and you're not even answering their questions, that is a surefire way to get them upset. Unnecessary risk-taking. A guardian is generally not going to want to take a lot of risks. So if you're doing it unnecessarily and you haven't proven the merit and the reason why you decided to take this risk, that's an issue for them. And lack of trust in others' credibility. If you don't, someone wants to take a risk and the guardian doesn't trust you or your background or your history, they're going to be a little triggered by that because they think that you're taking an unnecessary risk. So thank you. All right, connectors. Who's going to be our lead? Thank you, sir.
All right, I'm Jangling JJ. And some of the things that we had talked about were one trigger for our group was being micromanaged. That's something that really frustrates us, and a couple of other things were something that popped in my mind because I was telling the people in the group, I'm not going to share the whole story, but I had heard once that when you're taking these personality exams that generally you can find out who you are through these exams and which side you connect with whenever we're all pastors here, whenever the Holy Spirit convicts you, whenever you see the negatives. Whenever I saw that cyber warfare thing, I was like, dang it. That's the truth in my life a few times, and more often than I'd like to admit. So I started thinking about what triggered some of these moments, and I think that not being included or given the opportunity to connect with a group, like not being included in the collaborative sort of teamwork style events and things like that has been a thing that triggers me. So I think that not being able to connect with people, not being given the opportunity, and then Carrie had mentioned the unsolicited criticism, that quick criticism that comes before someone's willing to hear you out completely, and then they start already picking apart the idea and talking about how, or we take it personally, almost like this is, well, you're wrong, and you haven't really thought about this, and kind of shut down our ideas. So those are some of the triggers for us. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks. You taught the slide for me. That was great. You hit the bottom three perfectly. You said when people aren't willing to collaborate, that's what sets you off. That's what triggered you. You weren't involved in that collaborative decision, and that's what sets you. So, sensing people weren't for you. I think you said Carrie had mentioned that one. That was something that bothered her. Not recognizing the validity of your ideas, not giving you time. Oh, sorry. My bad. I warned you. I told you I was bad with names. Yeah.
And all of us in your church suspect ours.
Yeah. Thank you. Keep me honest. Oh. And then, people taking credit for your work. That'll definitely frustrate connectors because a lot of times they feel that they're already on edge a little bit because people might not feel that they're providing anything to the group because, all you did is you connected this person and this person. You didn't actually do the work. Those two people did the work. Well, there's a lot of effort in understanding who are the correct people to bring together and managing that relationship and making sure it flows and happens. And that's team building and insight that's going on. There's a lot of work that's occurring. Pioneers, come share with us. Self-energizing. See? Energizer bunnies.
Right, they are. I'm what next will. And the things that trigger us was basically defensiveness on a decision that have already been made, and being questioned why this, why that. That triggers us, and then personal attacks when personal, or when critiquing becomes personal. The other thing that we've mentioned was being judgmental. And then also when the spirit of truth is compromise. The other thing that triggers us is personal gratification, power struggle, and then also people that's being energized by having control and the power. So how does this impact the team? It breaks the momentum, when these triggers are or when our weapon is being launched. It breaks the momentum, and then also we have to earn the trust again. That's what came up.
Definitely.
Thank you. Right.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, with our pioneers, things that will frustrate them really quickly is wasting time. They're down to business. They want to get things done. They want to move forward. Strategy, vision, moving forward. If you waste time, that's going to get on their nerves. If you threaten their vision, that can trigger them because they've put time and energy into thinking, where do we need to go? How do we get there? This is where I think will bring the team victory and success. If you challenge that, that can threaten them. If you threaten their competence and think that they can't do it, or they're not smart enough, or they're not the person that should be in the role, that could trigger you. So be careful, because as you see these things happening, you don't want to launch your weapon system if you see these things happening. And then perceived incompetence in others. If you think that people around you aren't smart enough, or aren't good enough, or aren't up to snuff, that can trigger you. So that's pretty dangerous. Be careful with that. All right. So this is the last major section until we get to two quick pieces at the end, the change management piece at the end. So we're going to go through this piece a little bit faster. This is the rules of engagement. The rules of engagement are, how do we work with these different voices? You guys now know the pros of the voice, the cons, the weapon systems, the triggers, you've discussed them. Now we want to think about, now that we have all that base information, how do we pull it all together? How do we work with the team to embrace the team and get them all to play nicely with each other and leverage the strengths that each of the voices bring? So what we want to do is, for nurturers, we want to hear your honest feedback. We care what you think. Even though you have a quieter voice, it is integral. It is so important. You're the lifeblood of the team. So we need to hear your honest opinion. What the rest of us will promise in return when we speak to you is we'll be considerate of how we would bring critique to a voice, to an idea that you may have, or to a vision that you may have. Okay? So rest of us, remember that when we're speaking to nurturers. Okay? For creatives, we need you guys to dream big. We need you guys to be thinking out in the future. You know why? Nobody else does it the way you do it. Pioneers do a little bit of it, but they're doing it with a bent that serves their purposes. You guys are thinking of the perfect future state. How can it be? You're the innovators. If you guys aren't innovating, we're going to be stuck where we are. The Holy Spirit might connect with you guys in ways that will sound crazy to other people. We need that. Don't be afraid to listen to what you're hearing and to share it with others, and to have boldness and confidence that you're doing it because you're honoring Christ, not to impress others, not to tell others good ideas. You're just you're being a servant. You're listening to how Christ and the Spirit is speaking to you and through you. Crazy things can happen when you guys are freed up enough to think out into the future. Also, it's okay to be wrong. You don't have to get it perfect. We'll work it out with the rest of the team, because some of the things that we're going to do, the things that we'll promise in return, we're going to ask clarifying questions. We're going to try to understand what you're really saying. We're going to help you get there. But don't be afraid to be wrong. It's all right. Guardians. Guardians, you guys keep us out of trouble. We've told you this. We need you. Companies, churches will get into big trouble without our guardians. The questions that you have are important. So what do we want from you guys? We want your due diligence. We want you to ask those difficult questions. Maybe don't ask 50 questions, but limit it to your top 10, your top 5, your top 3 when appropriate. And what do the rest of us in the room promise in return? We need to stay engaged with our guardians as long as possible. We need to recognize that they help us, that they're an integral part. You know what? The vine and the branches, we're all connected. You know, it's the same parable. It's just put in voices now. You guys have preached this before. Connectors. We want you guys to sell your ideas as passionately as possible. Passion is in your blood. Passion is something you guys are good at. What do we promise in return, the rest of us in the group? We need to challenge your ideas because you're going to be refined and you're going to improve those ideas with some challenge. We're going to do it in a way that's loving and caring. We're going to do it in a way where we're not making it personal. We just want to make it better and work with you. So remember, whatever we're saying to people, do it with their best interest in mind. Pioneers, what we need from you guys, we need that strategy, we need that vision, we need those insights. Be careful of the strength of your critique of others, but we need your pioneering spirit. Make sure that you guys are listening to others. Make sure that you're inviting the opinion of others in. It's a very... I gotta stay in camera, I forgot. I love you guys even though I'm not next to you. It's really important for you guys to invite others into your world because you guys feel like you can operate by yourself a lot of times because you've done that. You can go off on a tangent pretty quickly. Make sure you're investing in your team and your team trusts you and that you are listening to your teams. Also, it might be a good idea if you have a team meeting, don't speak first. Let the team speak first. Let them share their thoughts, ideas, criticisms first because the strength of your voice and the strength of your criticism is so strong that if you present an idea or a vision or a view first, others might just naturally say, okay, it's got to be right. It came from you. What we promise in return, the rest of us, is we're going to put our body armor on. So when you share critiques and criticism and thoughts with us, we know that by nature you might not be as eloquent or loving in your sharing with us. We need to put our body armor on. Again, remember, immature, mature voices, maybe they are pretty loving in how they share their critique. So we're going to do a quick exercise. You guys can stay right where you are. We're going to give you 1 minute to think about this one. Challenging you guys. I think you can do it. All I want you to do is think about these rules of engagement, and I want you to think about your church. I want you to think about, knowing what I know now, how can I apply this to my church? What have I learned today that I could take back and apply right now that would help me with something I'm dealing with? How would it benefit my team? You know, the other questions are important. If you can't get to them, that's fine. Just you have a minute. Just think number 1 on that first question. Where could I apply the rules of engagement in my church? I want to take 1 minute. Think about it now. As you think of these, stand up right where you are and just say it in 1 or 2 words. If you need a sentence, just stand up and bring a voice to it. How could I apply what I've learned to my church? Just right where you are. You can do it right now. Yep.
One of the first things I saw was when you were talking about the different engagements is how we use that in marriage counseling with different individuals.
Marriage counseling. Great. What else? Ways that you could use either the rules of engagement or anything that you've learned. Something you want to take back and try out.
I'm going to listen first. Present the idea and then listen first.
Listen first. Great, thank you. Yes?
I need to engage our creatives more, and I need to, because the ones that I do believe are the creative are also very strong introverts.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to draw them out.
Mm-hmm. So draw out our creative introverts by listening to them first, engaging them more. That's great. One more. Something that you guys want to try. Nurturers, what would you want to try? So instead of deploying the nurturer weapon system of disengaging, you'd like to try to recognize that now and stay engaged. That's great. That's great. I got 2 charts left for you. This is the 70-30 model. This shows it was built around the concept of a healthy leader, but I think it also applies for a healthy pastor. A healthy pastor spends 70% of their time operating from their natural strengths so that they have the energy to focus on the other 30% that is not natural to them when they need to. As a pastor, you're asked to do so many different things. You don't only get to play in the areas that you're gifted at. But I want to tell you that I don't have to tell you this. The burnout rate for pastors is pretty high. It's a tough job. Recognizing this principle can potentially save you from burning out. If you are able to make sure that you and your staff, if you don't want your staff to burn out and turn over so frequently, this could be an insight that you could use. If you're able to figure out, how do I design jobs in my church? How do I design jobs for me and then hire people that support me in areas that I'm weak in so that I can spend and my team can spend 70% of their time operating from their strengths, you will see a marked improvement in their performance because they're operating from things that they're good at and energize them. When I get to do stuff like this, I'm energized. It's not work for me. This was fun. I was excited to come here today and do this. And it comes through in how I relate to people. When I have to sit down and do calculus, oh my goodness, that is my 30%. When I was in college, I was operating in that right side where I needed to operate from learned behaviors, and I hated it. And you know what? I got a degree in electrical engineering, and I never worked a day as an electrical engineer because I couldn't do it. It wasn't sustainable. I moved into systems engineering, which I enjoyed more and involved more people. And now in my career, I'm 20 years into it, I've moved from being an engineer, I've moved into HR. I'm still leveraging that learned behavior. I'm still leveraging my engineering background because I'm helping engineers learn and develop themselves. So you guys, what you can do as pastors, think about the 70-30 rule. Think about where you are. Think about where your staff is. Think about how you can change a few things so that you all can operate from your strengths a little bit more. Okay? There's normally an exercise where I would make you do it right now, but since we're up against time, I'm not going to make you do it right now. But think about it as homework. All right, this is the last main teaching chart. This is the change management curve. You guys have probably seen this, and I want to walk you through it because I think it'll help you guys. We deal with change every day. As a pastor, things aren't staying the same. Your people are changing, your initiatives are changing, the way you're supporting the community is changing. Everything changes. Your staff is changing. Understanding how change generally occurs can help you have a more successful outcome. So here's what happens. First, when a change is announced in the church or in your staff, there could be denial. People are frustrated, they're upset. They move from denial into that shock and realization and confusion of, oh my goodness, what's going on? And as you look at this and as you look at these changes, look, it all occurs across time. That's your x-axis on the bottom. And your y-axis is the motivation and performance. So how motivated is your team? How is their performance? Is it high? Is it low? So look where you start out, where denial is. You're not even halfway up the motivation performance. So this change is potentially occurring if you're introducing it because you want better improvement. You want better performance. You want something to change You don't change just for the sake of change. You're changing in many cases. You're introducing a change because you want to make an improvement to your church, to your organization. So as you move from denial, things could get a little better for motivation and performance because they're like, oh my gosh, things are going on. You've energized them. You've kind of shocked them. After I get through that initial shock and realization, that kind of begins to go down again because now they're getting angry. They're upset that things are changing. People, a lot of times, they don't like change if they don't understand it. It's your job to make sure that you're explaining the change. Communication is really important. Eventually, once they get down to the bottom of letting go, they realize this system's going away. I can't do it this way anymore. Performance might be at a low point. Motivation is at a low point. That's the most uncomfortable position to be in as a pastor, as a leader. But that's the end of stage one. That's the end of endings. Then you move into stage two, which is transitions of, all right, I'm trying to figure this out now. I'm searching it. There's some excitement, anxiety, uncertainty, fear, frustration. I'm figuring it out. Performance starts to improve. Then you get to the end of transitions, which is, all right, I'm starting to get it now. I think I see this. There's some optimism. There's some ideas I have about how I can use this and make it work for me. And then at the end, look, at the end you're at new beginnings. Change has been accepted, commitment, there's enthusiasm, there's trust. But look where you are on the motivation performance axis, your y-axis. You are way higher than where you were when you started with denial. So that's why you're making the change. Here's one of the most critical things I want to share with you about this chart. If you've heard nothing, turn on for right now and listen to this. You as a manager, or not a manager, as a pastor, you often are initiating these changes. You have had time to go through this curve. Nobody else has. When you introduce it to somebody else, you might be at the end where you're understanding change, some optimism, some ideas. You might be at change accepted, commitment, enthusiasm, trust. Depends where the change came from. If you initiated it, or if it came from the district, or if it came from somewhere else. You've had time to go through it. That's the key thing to remember. When you introduce it to others, don't expect them to jump to the end of the chart. Give them time to go through that. A lot of pastors will get frustrated because they're like, why don't they see it? Why don't they see this as a benefit to them? This is more helpful. It's because they just need time to go through that. And you went through it as well. You just didn't realize it potentially. So give them time to go through it. So guys, all this comes back to this chart. The reason why we spent this time together this morning is so that you could know yourself better, so you could lead yourself better. All these charts you can take with you and know yourself a little better, so you can lead yourself better, so you can lead your teams a little better and be more effective. Again, if you guys need me for anything, I'm available. I'll get these charts out somehow. We'll make it happen, Dave. Thank you guys so much for your time with me today. Really appreciate it, and I'm happy to be with you today. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Bill. If you are interested in having the notes emailed to you, I know that you receive emails from us, but they come to us in different sets of blocks, which are hundreds of emails. So if you want the notes that you saw on the screen emailed to you, sign up on the list I have right there on the ping pong table. Okay, and then we'll make sure that you get a set of these notes. Great. So thanks, Bill. We appreciate that and appreciate your wisdom and insight that you delivered to us today. Pastor Kerry, you have anything for us?
Thanks, Bill. Would you be available if some church boards or staffs wanted you to come their way to work with them? Okay. Maybe you'll put your contact information in with the charts. Okay. We had a gentleman that helped us a lot with these type things. Not having to lead your own team with these type things is an advantage. We had a gentleman, might bring him here someday to do some other things, Brian Charette. And he just, it was nothing personal with Brian. He just came in to help us find the excellence that we all were looking for. And you remind me of him. So thank you for helping us, Bill. Any questions? Do you all have any questions of Bill? Bill, why don't you stand up just a moment in case you might just have a lingering question or something you want to ask him that was on your mind that maybe he's studied deeper and wider than you've had an opportunity. Anything you want to ask?
Can you help, maybe it'll be too long, you won't be able to do it right now, but can you help make sense of what a healthy conversation between these five would look like? Because my brain started to go there and say like, oh, well, in the middle of a meeting that was going well, I can see what's in these things, but a little bit of it was fuzzy for me, honestly.
So a healthy conversation between those five. Really, I think what it looks like is once the team understands these five voices, it's a mutual respect among each other and realizing that, like we said earlier, you're going to be able to solve a greater variety of problems with everybody in the room. Everybody's needed. There's not one voice that is correct and one that is lesser or greater. Working together and the collaboration is really important. So if the teams are able to respect each other as they speak and do it in love, that's a healthy functioning team. If a pioneer is talking to a nurturer and talking down to them, that's not healthy. That's not a loving, caring relationship. So it's really the mutual respect in the conversations, I think.
Any others? That's our version of all hearts clear. Thanks, Bill. Yeah, that was a good question. Thanks, Jay. Pastor, for asking that. I saw a video that National Geographic photographer did. And I want to say his name was something, maybe DeWitt. Anyway, he was a photographer for National Geographic, and he has two great films that he did for corporations. The Church of Nazarene owns them both. If you call the USA Canada office, they'll loan it to you. You don't want to buy these films. They're very expensive. One is titled Everyday Creativity. And I remember getting it and showing it early on to my staff. And it helped the way that we had these conversations. It kind of disarmed us all, and in a sense was everyday creativity. And I believe that the theme of that particular one, or at least one of the films, was there's more than one right answer. And that became the theme of our meetings as a team. So everyone could share what they thought, and we would say, that's one right answer. Does anyone else have a right answer? And what he was doing in the film, he's a photographer. He comes to this beautiful waterfall, and he takes one picture, the one every tourist takes. And then he goes around that waterfall, and he said, here's another right answer. Here's another right answer. He got all the angles, and then he said, I picked my best right answer. You know, it's a neat way to include everyone, and you might be surprised that sometimes the one you didn't think had the right answer this time. So I think it's that team idea. The other film, I don't know if I remember the exact title of it, but it was Celebrate What's Right in the World. Celebrate what's right in the world. So you begin every meeting positively on something, because there's so much bad news. So we would kind of sometimes start our meeting and say, okay, somebody celebrate what's right with this world we live in. And it's the news that never makes the news, you know, the stuff that we might have seen. And just to give you something, this has all been so practical today. I'm always learning. I am a green apple. I don't want to quit learning. I was recently up at ENC, and I got to be with a lot of people there, you know, for lunches and things like that. And I made a few notes while I was there. It was just well, actually, I think I memorized them if I can't find the notes. But there was a lady that happened to be at one of the meals. She's one of the trustees. And she is, I believe she's COO of Pittsburgh Medical Centers. Maybe some of you know her. And I thought, now how often am I going to get to sit with somebody like this and just ask a question? And here are some of the things she shared. And that's where I came back to that idea, celebrate what's right with the world. She said that in our group at the hospital, whoever their leadership team is, and I got this because she said we can learn some things from Lockheed Martin, not just that they can learn from us. But just a few of the things she taught me sitting there at breakfast. I think they'll be part of who I am, or maybe they brought some confirmation of things I believe, whichever. Number one was, she said, start every conversation with a win. Kind of what's right with the world, but she said it a different way, with a win. Let's have a win. So let's start somewhere where we can really have a productive meeting. Let's start with encouragement. Start telling me something good, The second thing, maybe you all have heard this. You ever heard of the 10-foot, 5-foot rule? 5-foot, 10-foot rule? She said we teach all our people in our hospitals the 5-foot, 10-foot rule. If you're within 10 foot of a person, you acknowledge them. If you're within 5 foot, you speak to them. And, I think the church, we could learn, from this, the 10-foot, 5-foot rule. And I've been worn out with it, to be honest with you, since I heard it. Because a lot of people come within 10 feet of you. And I didn't think I had a problem with that. But I've learned I can do better. And then if they come within 5 foot, you just make sure you speak, say something. Maybe the acknowledgement's a smile or a howdy or something, whatever you say up in these parts. Yeah. I want to see if I can find the others. It can't be too far away because I just took these notes. I just got to remember what I titled them. Anyway, that's hilarious if you know my type here. Some of the creators are saying, help him, Lord. Nurturers are praying for me as well. Yeah. I make so many notes, that is a good thing, I'm assuming. Yeah, I'll find them all on the way home. But she did share 2 other things. Maybe I'll put them in my next 4 wins, and the first one to shoot them back to me will get a gift in the mail. Okay. Well, we're going to leave for now. I'm not going to look for them anymore. I love to bring people in from what some people will call secular into sacred. But I know that's different because you're taking the sacred. It's all sacred to you, I can tell. I hope our people pick up on that. But one of the best, I took a real risk doing this. But I had a friend of a friend who knew a Navy SEAL. And I thought, I think our team could learn from spending a day with a Navy SEAL. Wow, did we learn some stuff. And he came, and he had to dial back his language just a tad to be with us. But a few times, some things came out, and we were very gracious. We look forward to being with him. And he taught us a lot about warfare that we took to a spiritual warfare. It was just amazing to have this gentleman. And at the end, we just spent one day together, and we were all the better for it. But do you know what crystallized that day in that meeting with a Navy SEAL for me as a leader? At the end, he said, I think you and I are cut from the same cloth. I said, really? I mean, I'm kind of a scaredy cat. I don't think I could be a Navy SEAL. He wasn't saying that. He said, tell me what the most important thing to you is as a pastor. And I said, presence. He said, that's exactly the most important thing to a Navy SEAL. I thought, wow. And in that moment, I decided presence matters most. He said, if we lose presence, fighting yesterday's battles or tomorrow's battles as SEALs, we die. He said, now is what matters. So I've learned something today that I wouldn't have learned if you hadn't been out there rubbing shoulders, Bill. And maybe you make a good Navy SEAL, I don't know. But presence, this sense I got from a Navy SEAL. So I can't wait till the night when I'm thinking through what I write down a lot of stuff, and I say, Lord, what one thing did you teach me today? So maybe I'll get word to you if I get your contact information. But let's be green apples. Let's keep growing. I think that's attractive to people. I told my staff one day I'm done learning. And boy, they looked very disappointed. I said, now I'm learning by unlearning. Now, that's also a course that we all could take. I'm unlearning a lot of things, and I guess you might call that relearning. So thanks again. I had to say something, Let's all stand. Have the ushers come. We should close with a prayer, don't you think? I think I should pick one of these nurturing whippersnappers over here to come and have a prayer for us. Who's hiding on the back row? Is everybody standing? Yeah, okay. I don't know. Who do you think looks like they're ready to pray? I think Johnny Britt looks like he's ready to pray. Come, Johnny. Come this way a minute, because I'm going to tell something I learned from Johnny. The last Familiar Grounds, there were like 14 of us made it. I think there was a snowstorm coming, and so some people didn't make it. But we had a great, great learning time together, and a great time of communion, didn't we, Johnny? It was up at Macungie, and thanks for hosting. But Johnny was up. We have it at the Familiar Grounds if you've never been. A lot of times, Pastor Owen and I, we just put a lectern up, and we call it the witness stand. And you can come and just witness. Just come give testimony. And this is another example of learning something that's not a church environment. But you took the church there every day. And I didn't know that Brother Johnny had been a prison guard. Is that correct? Am I saying? Correction officer. See? He corrected me. He did it with love, though, because he's a nurturer. A correctional officer. And you can correct me, but I want to see if I learned what you taught me. He taught me, he said, in all of my career, I never saw a correctional officer make it to retirement in our field if they didn't have one of three things. And when he said this, I stopped and I said, Brother Johnny, say that again. I need to hear it out loud again. And it's helped me since. I've used this with multiple people. You didn't know what was coming up in my life, and neither did I. But I had a situation shortly after that what you taught me that day tooled me for that situation. So, learning is so important. So what I learned 2 months ago helped me a month later in a very practical situation. He said the three things, you got to have one of three things to make it to retirement as a career correctional officer. You either got to have alcohol, you had to have drugs, or you had to have Jesus. He said, I never saw anyone make it in my environment where I was without one of the three. And then he smiled and said, I had Jesus, which helped me a lot. But you know what? I think that's about true in a lot of environments. I've thought through this. But Brother Johnny, that endeared my heart to you. I have so much yet to learn from you. But for now, would you pray for us? Okay, come, Brother Johnny.
Heavenly Father, my acronym this morning was Joyful Johnny. And I'm joyful, and we all are, because of our relationship with you. We thank you, Lord, for your Son, Jesus Christ, as we come up to the celebration of his crucifixion and resurrection and all that comes with that. But this morning, Lord, we want to thank you for the food we're about to eat. In Jesus' name, amen.